Let's get into it. Recently, ATF published their engaged in business rule. From our vantage point, that is technically ATF giving themselves a blank check to decide who's a gun dealer and how to enforce it. What's your take on that policy?
Well, it demonstrates just once again the Biden administration and Democrats generally and the lefts generally just rejection of the Constitution. They think it's just a suggestion. I think it's a living document that just changes with the wind. And they don't believe in the freedoms that we believe are God-given but protected, thankfully, in our Constitution. And again, one of the most basic fundamental being the Second Amendment, protecting our right to defend ourselves and to keep and bear arms. That's not supposed to be infringed, of course. The language is very plain. The Democrats and the Biden administration and his ATF don't believe in that, and they're doing everything they can to trample on that freedom. And they know they cannot do it through the legislative process. They can't do it through Congress. They can't do it through the people's elected representatives that are accountable to the people. So here we see once again unelected bureaucrats, agencies, in this case the ATF, just declaring by decree or fiat or rulemaking something, trying to make law at the executive level. And in this case, trying to say that anyone who sells 5 or more firearms in the course of a year needs to be registered as a gun dealer and then suffer all the consequences there too, such as having to do background checks on individuals who they might sell a firearm to. And so obviously we want to push back on that and fight that because that is an illegal, unconstitutional trampling on our most basic right.
And it's funny, you ask ATF to break down this rule and give their analysis of this rule. We saw in committee last week when Dettelbach was in committee, and we asked him to kind of give his analysis on the rule. What are the thresholds? How many guns? And he couldn't answer. He didn't really have any answers as to how many guns you need to sell to become a dealer. At what threshold do you become a dealer? It's interesting to us that you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents to this rule, analyzing this rule, yet you can ask a straightforward question to Director Dettelbach, and he can't give us a straightforward answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do know, though, this is the slippery slope. They will never stop or never be satisfied until they have mandatory registry and mandatory confiscation and the stripping away of our foundational rights, which, again, the Second Amendment and the protection of our right to keep and bear arms was not intended for sportsmanship or for hunting. That's important and valuable to lots of Americans, and they ought to be able to exercise that right, of course. It wasn't even intended primarily just for self-defense for you and your family, but it was to ensure that we remain free. The first congressman from Virginia's 5th District and our 4th president famously wrote that we are unique among the nations of the world, that we trust our people to be armed. And the founders believed that it was necessary to have an armed citizenry, not only to help protect us from foreign invasion, foreign attack, that the people would also be part of the national defense, but also that that our government would fear the people and fear trampling on our most basic rights, one of those rights being, of course, the Second Amendment.
I think you said it perfectly there. They can package this, they can name it any way they want, frame it however they want. At the end of the day, it's their goal to have universal gun registration, to know where the guns are, who has the guns. So if we need to confiscate them, we can. I think that was very well put.
There's only one reason why they're not saying that. In some ways we see the Dems and the left, they're not pretending anymore. They're being very explicit, the weaponization of the government against citizens and those kind of things. But they know they cannot win if they come out and say that they want to eliminate the Second Amendment, that they want to, again, force registration, then confiscation. And they would absolutely do that if they could.